Hello and welcome to the second reading of a letter from Rachel Henning. This letter is written about 5 months from the first letter when Bidulph and Annie set off for their Australian adventure. Rachel is anxious for news, but in this correspondence there's news from home of parties, of romance, weddings, and the talk of war in the Crimea. All good distractions from Rachel, who really just wants to know, have they arrived safely? Where are they settling? And where does she send the next letter to? Please subscribe before you leave today. It'll help me keep making this content and reviving the sometimes forgotten art of letter writing. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy today's reading. Bye, guys. January 30th, 1854. The wedding. My dearest Annie and Bidulph, I'm getting very weary of the long time which has passed since you left England without our even hearing a word from you. We were very thankful to hear of the safe arrival of the Great Britain at Melbourne, for I was beginning to make myself miserable and to fancy all sorts of things. It seemed so long since she had been heard of. Brown, Junior, wrote to Edda the moment he saw the news in the shipping intelligence, which was very kind of him, for otherwise we should not have known it till today. You seem to have made a splendid passage and to have been only 1 day behind the time fixed upon for the passage to Melbourne. The news came by the hurricane, and we have been looking out ever since for letters from you, which we think she may also have brought, as you could probably have written from Melbourne. Etta and I have been talking of you this morning, and I have done little else but think of you for days past, partly perhaps because we have been getting so very anxious to hear from you, and also because I want so to see you again. I have quite made up my mind to go to Australia. Sometimes I think of going with Amy and the Tuckers, and sometimes that it will be better to wait for another year. However, what we hear from you will greatly decide this. Vincent Macy has come back, and by Lucy's account brings a poor idea of the prospects in Australia and says it is a great chance if you can get a living. However, he had no money to begin with. His health is quite restored. There is an account in the London News today of a terrible wreck of an Australian passenger ship off Dublin Bay, only 1 day after she had sailed from Liverpool. She was a very large ship and had too small a crew to manage her, and struck on a reef of rocks. The greater part of the passengers were drowned. We were very thankful to hear the same day that the Great Britain had arrived safe at Melbourne, for such an accident brings more vividly before one the dangers of the sea. It is nearly dark, and your birthday, Bidulph, is coming to an end as far as England is concerned. I suppose it is only just dawning in Australia. I must put away my writing till tomorrow. February 1st. No letters from you. We are rather disappointed, but we must now wait patiently for the regular mail. Perhaps the hurricane did not bring letters, for I am sure you would have written if you could. Mr. Boyce has just set off to Uckfield in company with Mr. Hughes, Colonel Davis and Mr. Pluckeret in Mr. Hughes' carriage. They are all going to appeal against taxes and will probably drive the commissioners out of their senses. I like Danehill more and more. The country is so beautiful, and I have plenty of time to do just as I like, and this quiet sort of life is most pleasant. February 2nd. Aunt Pinchard writes to me. The girls have some very pretty new dresses. Rose, however, began taking some music lessons of Miss Wingrove today. She accompanies John Lester's flute and wants a little help. Bella gave an immense ball last night, the last she is to give. None of our party were present. All gave it up at my request, which I consider very good of them. On Friday we have a party here. I feel everything is for the last time and that we shall all be together as one unbroken family. Tregenna and Rose will certainly be gone before another Christmas, if not Rachel. I suppose Kate will live with us till she is married. If Mr. Arnold were not a poet and a professed squire of dames, I should have no doubt of his intentions regarding Kate. He is now reading for a first. I intend Rose to have a very elegant trousseau, but not many things, as she will have her Indian outfit to get afterwards. John would load her with presents if I did not interfere. He has magnificent ideas. Tregenna hopes to be ordained in June and marry soon after, but I don't think he can be. All this is from a letter I received from Aunt last week. In one dated January 29th, she says, after mentioning the arrival of the Great Britain at Melbourne, of which she also had heard, Rachel's love affair is the most fierce and throws all others into the shade. I suppose it is their youth. They have neither eyes nor ears for anyone else. They sometimes walk twice a day, and Shields slips into the drawing room immediately after dinner and spends the evening with us. We all increasingly like him. There is an honest simplicity in his character. His face also improves. He is very handsome, in short, and has a splendid bass voice, a great addition to our musical choir. His mother is coming to see us at Easter, and then we shall talk about their future plans. John and Rose have fixed the early part of August for their wedding, which will give them a few good months of travel on the continent. Rose wishes so much to spend another Christmas here. We are already beginning to think of the wedding, which will be on a magnificent scale if John had his way. I really am not equal to the occasion. I shall see that Rose is very elegantly and very youthfully dressed. We are to have 8 bridesmaids, your royal self among the number if you will come, and 8 bridesmen, all in white. The maids, not the men. And Mr. Parr and Mr. Barn to marry them. There is a dreadful fear hanging over us, lest in consequence of the war and the part Persia is taking, all officers should be ordered back to India. John hears from his friends that it is expected. Being on sick certificate, it would not necessarily affect him, but he has a conscientious feeling that he ought to go, and the whole matter would then have to come off in a fortnight. It is too bewildering to think of. Rose's habit and hat came home today, a wide awake and feather, and they take their first ride on Monday. I know Pride will have a fall. There, Annie, I hope I have told you enough Mount news, but Aunt contrives to put things down in such a much more entertaining way than I can that I prefer copying her words to distilling them into mine. I think she ought to ask Etta and Amy to Rose's wedding also, but very likely she will, as it was the bridesmaids she was speaking of when she only mentioned me, but Amy will very likely be on her way to Sydney, for Mr. Tucker's health is so failing that I think they will very likely go out earlier than they intended doing. I'm not sure that I shall not also be on my way, for I have quite made up my mind to come out, unless indeed I should hear anything from you that would make it downright foolish to do so. But if you both settle out there, as I fully expect you will, I shall come out also, either this year or next. If I do not, perhaps we shall never meet again, and that is not for one moment to be thought of. I have felt that more and more every day since you went. I don't think I should dislike Australia after all, and I would rather be anywhere with you than in the most beautiful place without you. I am very happy here indeed. The country is lovely. Mr. Boyce generally sits in his study now, having had a new grate put in there, large enough to roast a sheep by. rather to Etta's dismay, who mourns over the consumption of coal, which is 50 shilling a tonne in London this winter. But though I like Danehill very much, I do not like the idea of always living at one end of the world and you at the other. I am reading Gibbon by way of history and have been very busy arranging the flowers and mosses I got last summer. They all put me so in mind of you both, for we were generally together when we got them. I have finished my square for Aunt Carr's ottoman, and it looks very well. I am going to send it to her soon, and then I hope the unlucky ottoman will be made up. It has been in hand these 7 years. I am going to do one of Mr. Boyce's slippers, and Etta the other. We got a very pretty pattern from Mrs. Hughes. She is most good-natured and lends me all her music, which it is not everyone would do. Few people like lending new music. It is getting dark, and I'm afraid the postman will come every minute. God bless you, my dearest sister and brother. Ever your affectionate, Rachel Henning.